Namaste. Welcome to all for yet another episode of Śabda-yoga. In this in this episode, we will be analyzing the word Nirodha, an important word in the yogic context. So we will see the etymology, lexicon, and the textual occurrences based analysis for this term Nirodha. Now first we will move into the etymology. So as you can see, the word Nirodha is made up of three components: Ni, Rudh and Ghai. Ni is the prefix, Rudh is the root word, and Ghai is the suffix. Now the root word Rudh, it is used in the sense of avaranam, Rudhir avarane. What is avaranam? To surround, to besiege, to enclose, to obstruct, and it even means to obscure in certain contexts. So these are the possible meanings of the word Rudh. Quite a variety of meanings are there for the word Rudh. Though in Sanskrita it is only avarana, the self-same avarana in various contexts takes up these various shades of meanings. And then the prefix ni means nitaram, completely. So one of the most prevalent meanings of the prefix is nitaram, completely. There are other meanings also, certainly, exceedingly. They also exist for the term ni. Here in this context of Nirodha, it possibly means completely. And then the suffix ghai, and this ghai is added in the sense of bhava. What is bhava? The act. It conveys the meaning, the act of. And this is based on the rule. This suffix is added based on the rule bhave of Ashtadhyayi. So in that meaning of bhava, the act, the suffix ghai has to be added to the root word rudh with the prefix ni. So then what is the derivative statement that emerges from this etymological activity? Nitaram rudhyate iti nirodhaha. So the act of complete obstruction. So that becomes the meaning of that becomes one simple derivative meaning that emerges from the etymology. Now we move into the lexical aspect. In Amarakosha, there is just one verse, one portion of the verse that refers to Nirodha. Nigrahastu nirodhasyat. So Nirodha means nigraha. Nigraha is control, keep in check, restraint, curb. So these are the meanings that the Amarakosha gives. So nigraha, we are well aware of in yogic context, Indriya nigraha, control of the senses. So in the sense of restrainment, control, so that dimension of restrainment is added from this reference. From the etymology gave the meaning of obstruction and complete kind of obstruction. Here the shade of meaning that the lexicon adds is control or restraint, nigraha. So these are the meanings that emerge from the etymology and lexicon. And let us see how these, how the meanings or how the yoga texts have used Nirodha in various contexts, in what sense they use. We will go into the textual occurrences. So first let us consider the word from the occurrence of the word from the Yogasūtra, the primary text in the activity of Śabda-yoga. So there are totally 4 references to the word Nirodha in the Yogasūtra, entire Yogasūtra, of which 3 of them are from the first chapter itself. Of course, the very first, so the second, in first pada, second sutra, we find the usage Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So the Vritti Nirodha of the Chitta. So that is defined as yoga. And then what is the meaning of this Vritti Nirodha? there are various commentators who give various meanings. So Vachaspati Mishra, one of the older commentators, says Nirudhyante yasmin pramanadi vrittayaha avastha visheshe chittasya. So that state of mind, avastha vishesha, where the activities of the or the vrittis of the mind are restrained or controlled. So that is, so Nirodha is presented as a state of mind where the activities of the mind are restrained. And then Bhoja says, beautiful explanation that Bhoja in his commentary gives, Nirodho bahirmukhataya parinati vichedat antarmukhataya pratiloma parinamena swakarane layaha. It's a beautiful presentation. So bahirmukhataya parinati vichedat. So the movement of the mind outside, bahirmukha, that movement or that modification outside, that is stop, vicheda. So that is stopped, and then making that mind turn inwards, antarmukhataya pratiloma parinamena, a reverse activity. So the outgoing mind, the outwardly mind is stopped, that outwardly tendency of the mind is stopped, and then the mind is made to turn inwards and reversing its activity, and swakarane layaha, so karane layaha, and making it get merged or making it dissolve into its cause. So that is the essence or some substance of Nirodha. So three activity: cessation of movement outside, and turning the mind inwards, and then making the mind get absorbed into its cause. What is the cause of the mind? We know that the ahankara, and then mahat, and then the prakriti. So that sums up, beautifully sums up the idea of chittavritti nirodha. So one of the well-rounded definitions of nirodha we see from Bhoja. Then Sadashiva Brahmendra says rajasa tamasa vritti nirodha. So it is not the complete cessation of all activities, rather it is the stoppage or obstruction of rajasic and tamasic activities of the mind. That is chittavritti nirodha. And then Acharya Krishnamacharya says dhyana virodhi yavad bhashya vishayaka chitta parinama nirodha ityarthaha. So obstructing or stopping or leading to cessation, all those activities of the mind which are opposed to dhyana. So taking care to nurture the state of dhyana. So in that process, so it is very important to nurture the mind in the state of dhyana. In that process, whatever comes as a diversion or distraction, stopping that is called as nirodha. So in this way, we find in the traditional commentaries so many beautiful definitions or descriptions of chittavritti nirodha. Then it is thus we can see that from complete obstruction to the reduction or just promoting sattvika vrittis. So all this fall into the range of meanings of chittavritti nirodha. This is from the first reference of the word nirodha. Just from one occurrence, we see so many shades of meanings of the word chittavritti nirodha emerging from the commentaries. Of course, we know for this nirodha to happen, abhyasa and vairagya are the tools. Abhyasa vairagya abhyam nirodha. Then later in the third reference from the first chapter is tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodha nirbija samadhihi. So by obstruction or by suspending or by not allowing the samskaras generated by the ridambara prajna even by paravairagya, then every samskara, every vritti gets subdued and by that obstructed, and then the ultimate state of nirbija is attained. So tasya nirodha, sarva nirodha. These are the two expressions. Tasya nirodha means obstruction or suspension or subduing of the samskaras created by the Ritambhara Prajna. Ritambhara Prajna is also a vritti and it creates a samskara. If at the root the Ritambhara Prajna samskaras are subjected to the state of Nirodha or obstruction or subdual by Paravairagya, then Sarva Nirodha. So because there is only at that state of mind, only one vritti is creating repeated samskaras, that is Ritambhara Prajna alone reigns. In that state, Ritambhara Prajna samskaras are the source from which the Ritambhara Prajna again is promoted. So if that Ritambhara Prajna samskaras are even subdued or obstructed by Paravairagya, then Sarva Nirodha happens, and then so the total cessation or total obstruction happens, or total subduing of both the samskaras, and by consequence the vrittis are also done. By that the state of nirbija samadhi is achieved. So here in this sense we see the subduing of the vritti, subduing of the samskaras. See, in the previous references, subduing of the vrittis were mentioned, but in 151 we see the samskaras are obstructed, or the subduing of the samskaras happen. So when we analyze this, we clearly understand that in the first chapter itself there is vritti nirodha and also samskara nirodha. So nirodha of the chitta itself happens at two levels. One is the samskara nirodha and also the vritti nirodha. So in Sutra 151, it speaks about samskara nirodha. One can get access to the samskaras only at a higher level. So initially, what we can get hold on to is the manifest form of chitta, that is the vrittis. So that's why initially chitta vritti nirodha was spoken, and later when really a person has progressed through the various levels of sabija samadhis, then when he comes to the nirbija samadhi, then samskara nirodha happens. Normally this discussion or this distinction or the existence of a samskara nirodha is normally not discussed. So this has emerged through this discussion on the Śabda-yoga, through this Śabda-yoga activity. Now we go into the final reference from Yogasūtra, where we see Yuthana Nirodha Samskarayoho Abhibhava Pradurbhavau Nirodha Kshana Chittanvayo Nirodha Parinamaha. So this is again a further interesting, deeper level of Nirodha that is discussed here. And here it is essentially the Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So even when we say there is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, even when the Nirodha at the level of Vrittis are happening, this sutra says at the level of Samskara, the Parinamas still happen. So that becomes very interesting and very important, that by the mere Chitta Vritti Nirodha itself, everything does not end. One has to understand that even when there is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, at the level of, so what is Chitta Vritti Nirodha itself is characterized by the activity at the level of samskaras. So this sutra says the Vyuthana samskaras go down, and then the Nirodha samskaras manifest. So that is the process of Chitta Vritti Nirodha, and that is what is called as that is the kind of activity that is going on when there is the state of Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So when there is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, a Nirodha Parinama, an activity connected to Nirodha is happening. Where is that activity happening? At the level of samskaras. What is the kind of activity that is happening? So the subduing of the Yuthana samskaras or outgoing samskaras, the samskaras which take the mind outwards. So that happens, and then the Nirodha Parinamas or the Nirodha samskaras, they gain upper hand. So this kind of a change is happening when the chitta, if the chitta has to subsist in the state of Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So that's very interesting. These four references have brought out three kinds of ideas about the Nirodha One is there is chitta vritti nirodha and there is a samskara nirodha. So there is a vritti nirodha and there is samskara nirodha. And even when there is a samskara nirodha, even when there is a vritti nirodha, there is some kind of a change or activity going on at the level of samskaras. So hence these are the interesting ideas that emerge from the textual analysis of the occurrence of the word Nirodha in the Yoga Sutras. Then we go on to the next text that we have taken up, Bhagavad-gītā. The word Nirodha as such is not found, but associate expressions such as Niruddham and Niruddhya are found. For example, Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaiva atmana atmanam pasyanna atmani tushyati. In the 6th chapter on Dhyana Yoga, there are just two occurrences of Niruddham and Niruddhya in Bhagavad-gītā. So we will see the first one is Niruddham, where it says that the mind subsides. Uparamate chittam, the mind subsides. How does the mind subside? Niruddham yoga sevaya, by the practice of yoga seva, or by the practice of yoga, the mind, what happens, is restrained. So the mind which is restrained by the practice of yoga gradually subsides, means it does not get into further activity, and then it is established in the Atman and it blissfully stays there. So here we see when the mind is restrained by the activity of yoga, by the virtue of yogic practice, the mind gets restrained, and by that restrainment, gradually the mind gives up its tendency to act. So it subsides. And then finally, it allows the Atman to be established in its true nature. So that is one reference where we find the usage Niruddham. And then in the 8th chapter, we see another related expression, Niruddhya sarvadvarani sanyamya manohridi niruddhya cha murdhnyadhayatmanah pranam astito yoga dharana. A special yoga dharana is mentioned. So where in the process of shedding the physical frame, so a yoga dharana is mentioned where all the senses are controlled and then the mind is restrained in the hridaya. So in the heart region, in the yogic heart region, mid-chest region, the mind is restrained. The senses are controlled. The mind is restrained in the heart region, and then the prana is gradually then taken to the top of the head, and this is called as yoga dharana. So in this yoga dharana, we can see the mind is being restrained in the heart region. So this is the second occurrence. So these are the two occurrences of the word Nirodha, or associated occurrences, Niruddhya and Niruddham in Bhagavad-gītā. And similar, but in Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā, again, Nirodha and associated expressions are found in 9 occurrences or 9 portions, 9 verses. We find the usage of Nirodha and associated expressions. We see them in various contexts. So, Gudam Niruddhya Gulphabhyam. So, Gudam Niruddhya, by pressing or by obstructing the Guda, the anus region, by the ankle. So, then one has to Yutkramena Samahitaha. Then one bends forward, and in this Kurmasana posture, one attains the Kurmasana posture. So, Gulpa. So, by the ankle, pressing against or obstructing the anus. So there the word Niruddhya is used in the context of Kurmasana. Then Vayum Nirodhayet, the same expression Vayum Nirodhayet is found in the 2nd chapter twice in the continuous verses 2.2 and 2.3. So Chalevate Chalam Chittam Nischale Nischalam Bhavet Tato Vayum Nirodhayet. So if one has to have a hold on the activities of the mind, one has to control the activities of the breath. Hence, one should restrain the movement of the breath. So, vayum nirodhayet. So, restraining, controlling, regulating the activity of the breath. So, yavad vayu sthito dehe tavad jivanam uchyate maranam tasya nishkrantihi tato vayum nirodhayet. In 2.3 also, if you want to live long, control, regulate, restrain the movement of the breath so that it is long and subtle. So there also in pranayama occasion also we find the usage of the word nirodha. Then akeshad anakhagracha nirodhavadhi kumbhayet. So this is in Surya Bhedana pranayama where we see that nirodha avadhi, of extent of nirodha means extent of holding the breath within. So in Surya Bhedana pranayama, the breath is inhaled through the right nostril. After that, the kumbhaka is practiced. So the kumbhaka is nirodha. So nirodha means not allowing the breath immediately to come out. So the breath is restrained within. So how should it be restrained? So the restrainment of the breath within, the nirodha, it should be felt till the limits of the body. Akeshat anakhagracha. From the hair on the top of the head till the tip of the nails on the toe. So that is the nirodha avadhi, the limits to which the nirodha is felt, the kumbhaka is felt. So in that context also we find the nirodha avadhi expression. Then in 3.23 in the third chapter on mudras, we again find the usage nirodha ayantu sarvanadinam urdhvagati nirodhakaha. The jihva bandha. In the jihva bandha practice, so by the practice of jihva bandha, what happens is the movement of prana towards the nadis that are situated above. So that is stopped. And slowly all of them are focused and they are channelized towards the sushumna. So I'm not going into the details of jihva bandha, but here the urdhvagati nirodhakaha, the upward movement of prana in various nadis is stopped by jihva bandha and it is channelized towards sushumna. Again, in the fourth chapter, we see the sushumna nadi, the importance of the kundalini awakening so that the facilitation of prana into sushumna happens. So, vayuhu sushumnayam pravishet anirodhataha. Only when the kundalini is awakened without being obstructed, anirodhataha, without being obstructed, the vayu can enter into or the prana can enter into sushumna only when kundalini is awakened. So here the expression is anirodhataha, unobstructed, the prana can flow into sushumna. Then jnatva sushumna sadbhedam brahmarandre nirodhayet. So one should know the ways, and again the same idea is continued. One should know the ways and means to pierce the sushumna nadi with prana, and then it has to be allowed into the sushumna nadi, brahmarandra, and allowed it, and it should be gradually taken into the taken to the brahmarandra position. So that is also described here. Brahmarandre nirodhe, it has to be arrested there. So the prana has to be taken into the sushumna and then it has to be restrained. Nirodha, the prana has to be restrained in the brahmarandra on the top of the head. And then divana pujaye lingam ratrau naivacha pujayet sarvada pujaye lingam divaratri nirodhataha. So divaratri nirodhataha is the expression here. Diva ratri nirodhataha. Diva here is very symbolic expression. Diva generally means daytime. Ratri generally means nighttime. Diva here refers to the Surya Nadi, the prana. Ratri here refers to the Chandra Nadi, the apana. So the movement of the prana in these two nadis, they are restrained, and when these are channelized into the sushumna, then what happens? That day and night does not exist for a particular means the distraction or the modifications or the changes of day and night that brings in the changes that the day and night brings in, they doesn't exist. Means the constant movement of prana which constantly makes so many changes happening distractions and diversions at the level of chitta happening, they are also reduced. And then when the prana is channelized into Sushumna by the restrainment of Surya Nadi and Chandra Nadi, Diva and Ratri, then the mind settles down into the state of Dhyana. That is symbolically indicated by Diva Ratri Nirodhataha. Now the obstruction of the movement of prana in the Surya Nadi and Chandra Nadi. Then the prana moves into the Sushumna. That is indicated here in 4.42. And then the description of Shanmukhi Mudra is there in 4.68, 4th chapter of Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā. Shravana Puta Nayana Yugala Ghrana Mukhanam Nirodhanam Karyam. Shravana Puta, the ears, and then Nayana Yugala, the two eyes, and then Ghrana, the nostrils, Mukha, the mouth, all these are to be blocked. Nirodhanam Karyam. All these are to be sealed, of course, with the fingers. So then this Shanmukhi Mudra happens, which facilitates the practice of the Nada Anusandhana. So across the text, be it the first chapter on asana, in the pranayama chapter, in the mudras chapter, and later towards Nada Anusandhana, facilitation of Nada Anusandhana by Shanmukhi Mudra also, we find the usage associated to Nirodha, Nirodhayet, Niruddhya, Nirodhakaha. And non-obstruction is also mentioned. As obstruction is also mentioned, non-obstruction is also mentioned. Non-obstruction of pranas flow into Sushumna. That is also indicated in these 9 occurrences. So thus we see, when we just analyze the textual references that we have seen thus far, we see that in Bhagavad-gītā and Yogasūtra, basically the expression Nirodha and the associated expressions are connected with the mind only. So be it the stopping or cessation of the activities of mind, and being or restraining or fixing the mind. Mano hridi niruddhya. So basically it is concerned, these two texts, Bhagavad-gītā and Yogasūtra, use the word Nirodha in the context of or being focused on the activities of the mind, stopping, cessation, or restraining or fixing the mind somewhere to attain the goals of yoga. So that is indicated in Bhagavad-gītā, whereas Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā brings in something new, where it is used in the sense of blocking or obstructing in the context of asana, in the context of pranayama, in the context of mudra. Everywhere the word Nirodha is used in the sense of the blocking or obstructing those the limbs of the body, or the breath, or the sense organs in Shanmukhi Mudra sense. So thus we see that in the context of yoga, Nirodha does not essentially point only to Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Nirodha, putting together Haṭha-yoga, Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā, Bhagavad-gītā and Yogasūtras together, we can see that there are so many ideas that emerge. Nirodha at various levels are essential, right? So from the level of body, breath, the sense organs, and also the mind, Nirodha is needed. So Nirodha has to start from the body gradually, and there is Nirodha in the prana, there is Nirodha of the Indriyas, and finally the Nirodha of the Chitta. Even at the level of Chitta, we see Nirodha happening at the level of Vrittis initially, and then for the ultimate Chitta Vritti Nirodha to happen, the Samskara Nirodha has to happen. Only by that, the Nirbija Samadhi, the ultimate yogic state, is achieved. So we see just from the body turning inwards gradually till the so if body is the starting point for Nirodha, the last or the end point of Nirodha is samskaras. So from Sharira Nirodha to Samskara Nirodha. So this is the journey that one has to take in the path of yoga, in the context of Nirodha, to reach the ultimate goal of Kaivalya Swarupe Avasthanam in yoga. And these various levels are to be understood, and these various levels that exist for Nirodha have emerged by this activity of Śabda-yoga, which brings in the inputs from Lexicon, from the etymological derivations and also from the analysis of textual occurrences. Thank you very much.